Have you ever, looked at the world lately and just wondered why things haven't completely fallen apart?
I mean, yeah, it really does feel like we're constantly sitting on the edge of a cliff, doesn't it?
Exactly. You look at the news, and we have these massive geopolitical tensions building up.
Tensions that, historically speaking, would have triggered massive global disruption.
Right. And then we have these technological shifts happening at a speed that, honestly, defies human comprehension.
But the ground isn't shaking?
No, it's not. The markets just keep functioning. The lights stay on. It feels weirdly, almost suspiciously quiet.
Well, it is the absolute definition of a deceptive calm.
Yeah.
We've been, conditioned to expect instability to look a certain way. We expect it to be loud, to be chaotic.
Like long lines and immediate visible panic in the streets.
Exactly. But what we're looking at today suggests the exact opposite. The friction is absolutely there, but the visible crisis is just absent.
And that paradox is exactly what we're getting into today. Welcome to this deep dive.
We've got a really great one today.
We do. We have a truly fascinating stack of sources to go through for you. We're looking at a structural thesis known as STA 9.3 and excerpts from a highly analytical framework called LMOS version 1.1.
It's some heavy but very crucial material.
It really is. And our mission for you today is pretty ambitious. We want to fundamentally change how you look at global stability and how you process that constant stream of information you encounter every single day.
Right. We want to help you move past that surface level noise.
Exactly, to see the hidden structural tensions beneath.
And to do that, we really need to introduce the core concept from our sources today. It's a phase of systemic behavior called the silence phase.
The silence phase, yeah.
The thesis here argues something entirely counterintuitive. It says that a lack of a visible crisis absolutely does not equal stability.
Wow. Okay, so quiet doesn't mean safe.
Not at all. In fact, we are going to reveal how to spot the hidden heat that's building up right under our noses, precisely when things seem the most peaceful.
Because the real-world evidence for this silence phase is quite literally everywhere once you know how to look for it.
Whoa, absolutely everywhere.
The text points out that we are currently sitting on multiple massive high-pressure zones across the globe. So let's get concrete about what those pressures actually look like right now.
So the sources outline 3 specific compounding areas where this pressure is critical. First, in energy.
Okay, energy.
Right. We have ongoing serious risks in the Middle East, particularly around critical maritime choke points like the Strait of Hormuz.
Which isn't just a political issue.
No, it's a constant humming tension on the actual physical flow of the world's energy supply.
Right.
Second, we have logistics. And we aren't just talking about a delayed package from an online retailer here.
We're talking about deep supply chain jams.
Exactly. Chronic delays at major ports that have essentially just become normalized. The circulatory system of global trade is choked, and yet we've just, decided to accept it as the new normal.
Yeah, we just kind of shrug it off. And the third one is finance, which ties directly into the physical world in a way I think we often ignore.
Oh, totally.
The sources highlight the massive breakneck acceleration of artificial intelligence investment. We have trillions of dollars chasing a technology that requires just a mind-boggling amount of electricity, cooling water, and physical hardware.
Right, the physical constraints.
Exactly. The financial capital is flowing instantly, but the physical resources required to actually manifest the technology just don't exist at that scale yet.
It's the perfect illustration. You have energy, logistics, and finance all operating under immense, historically unprecedented strain.
So here's the question I think we all have, and the question I want to pose to you listening.
Yeah.
Wait, if all these massive pressures are happening right now simultaneously, why aren't we seeing crazy price spikes?
That's the big question.
Right. Why isn't there a total market meltdown or rolling blackouts across major cities? Have our global systems just gotten incredibly resilient?
Yeah, or are our institutions just much better at handling crises now? Exactly. Are we just better at this?
Well, the STA 9.3 thesis directly addresses that assumption, and the answer is a resounding no.
No. Okay.
What we are witnessing is not resilience, and it definitely isn't stability. The text uses a very specific mechanical term for this. They call it heat accumulation.
The heat accumulation.
Yeah, the pressure is absolutely there, the friction is happening, but it is not being properly vented or rectified by the system.
So the problem didn't go away, and the system didn't solve it. The system is just acting like a battery, storing all that negative energy.
Precisely. The silence we're experiencing is merely a phase in a longer cycle.
Okay.
It's a period where the misalignment between different parts of the global system is building up, completely out of sight.
Right, so the structural changes are happening, but the visible indicators, like massive price crashes or structural collapse, they just haven't triggered yet,
Exactly. The system is absorbing the heat, but it hasn't caught fire.
which honestly makes it so much more concerning.
I mean, if prices were spiking right now, it would be painful, but it would be a release of pressure.
Yeah.
The system would be communicating with us.
Yeah, you know exactly what was wrong.
So if we know what the silence phase is, this hidden heat accumulation, we need to talk about why that pressure gets trapped in the first place. How exactly does this heat get stuck?
Well, the sources break down the anatomy of this trapped pressure into three distinct hidden structures.
Okay, let's go through them.
These are the actual mechanisms keeping everything so quiet. The first one is called shear, which is fundamentally about a difference in speed.
Shear.
Yeah.
When I think of shear, I think of engineering, like physical shear stress, where two parts of a material are being pushed in opposite directions.
That is exactly the physics of what is happening, just on a geopolitical and economic scale.
Wow.
It's the friction caused by differing velocities. Think about the expansion of AI and the financial markets that we just discussed.
Right, the trillions of dollars moving instantly.
Exactly. Those layers of the world operate at lightning speed. Capital can pivot billions of dollars across the globe in fractions of a second. An algorithmic update can change an entire business model overnight.
But then you have the physical layers.
Right. The energy grids, the logistics networks, the legal institutions. Pouring concrete for a new nuclear reactor or laying high-voltage transmission lines, that takes a decade.
So if the fast layer is constantly dragging the slow layer, that implies the technology sector is actively pulling against the physical infrastructure it relies on to survive.
Yes.
You can't just 3D print a new power grid overnight because an algorithm demanded more processing power.
You really can't, and that creates a massive invisible tearing force.
A carrying force.
The financial and technological demands pull violently against the physical and institutional realities. The fast layer wants to be at the finish line, while the slow layer is still tying its shoes.
That is such a vivid image.
Right. That massive speed difference creates immense hidden friction. It's a structural shear.
That paints a very clear picture. The capital moves, the concrete doesn't, and the space between them just fills with tension.
Exactly.
So how does the system try to handle that tension? What is the second hidden structure?
The second is called membrane calcification.
Membrane calcification. Sounds medical.
It kind of does. The text asks us to imagine the boundaries between nations or the interfaces between different sectors like security and finance as membranes.
Or like contact points.
Right. In a healthy system, when pressure hits a membrane, it reacts naturally. It flexes.
Like prices adjusting or supply chains rerouting organically.
Exactly. Policies adapt to new realities. But right now, these membranes are actively hardening. They are calcifying.
But why are they hardening? I mean, if you are a policymaker or a corporate leader, wouldn't you want your system to be flexible and adaptive?
In theory, yes, but in reality, flexibility means accepting short-term pain, and our current institutions are deeply averse to that.
Yeah.
Membranes calcify because of fear, institutional rigidity, and the desperation to maintain the illusion of control.
Let's look at a concrete example of that.
Okay, imagine global energy supplies get constrained. In a flexible system, the price of energy would spike immediately. That's the membrane flexing.
Right, sending a signal.
But a sudden price spike causes political outrage. It might cost a government an election.
So the government steps in and heavily subsidizes the energy cost, or they artificially freeze the price.
Yes.
So the citizen doesn't see the price go up, and the politician keeps their job. It looks like a win-win on the surface.
On the surface, yeah. The narrative remains completely quiet, but underneath, the actual physical scarcity hasn't changed at all.
Wow.
The structural debt to pay for that subsidy is ballooning invisibly. The market signal that would have told energy companies to build more infrastructure is just blocked.
So the pressure hits the membrane, but instead of the system reacting and venting that pressure, it gets suppressed.
Exactly. The pressure is forced to stay trapped inside the system, compounding year after year.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not necessarily malice. It's just a short-term survival tactic that creates a long-term catastrophic risk.
It really is.
Okay, what is the third structure that keeps this heat trapped?
The third is compatibility errors.
Compatibility errors.
Yeah. This occurs when top-down, rational decisions, like a sweeping new government mandate or a massive corporate transformation strategy, clash entirely with the physical, cultural, or logistical constraints on the ground.
Give me an example of what that looks like in practice.
Well, imagine a top-down mandate to transition an entire nation's vehicle fleet to electric within, say, 5 years.
Okay.
On a spreadsheet, in a boardroom, it is completely rational. The carbon reduction models look perfect. The economic projections show job growth in the tech sector. It should work flawlessly.
But let me guess, the ground reality is totally different.
Right. When that policy actually interfaces with reality, there is a fundamental incompatibility. The physical supply chain simply cannot mine enough copper or lithium in that time frame.
Or the local power grids aren't upgraded to handle millions of cars plugging in simultaneously at 6 p.m.
Exactly. But the institutions force the policy through anyway, because reversing course would be politically disastrous.
So on the surface, the press releases still say everything is on track.
Yep.
But internally, the distortion is secretly expanding. The automotive industry starts quietly burning through cash, and the power grids operate closer and closer to redlining.
Exactly. You have a policy operating in one reality and the physical world operating in another.
You know, hearing you lay out those three mechanisms, the sheer of different speeds, the calcification of the membranes, and the compatibility errors, it immediately makes me think of tectonic plates.
Oh, that's a great way to think about it.
Right. Think about it. You look out over a mountain range, and on the surface, everything looks completely still. The trees aren't moving. It's a beautiful, quiet day.
But underground.
Exactly. Miles underground, you have these massive continental plates snagged on each other. The mantle is pushing them at different speeds, so there's your shear. The rock at the fault line is hardened and completely
Locked together.
yes, locked together.
Yeah.
That's the calcified membrane refusing to flex. And they are structurally incompatible in how they fit together.
So they just sit there.
They sit there, locked in total silence, building up terrifying amounts of kinetic energy for decades.
That is the perfect analogy for the global geopolitical state right now. The silence phase is exactly that period of time before the earthquake.
Wow.
The tectonic plates of global supply, energy, and finance are grinding against each other. The heat and kinetic energy are accumulating to historic levels, but because the membranes are so calcified, the surface remains entirely undisturbed.
So if we accept that premise that we are living on top of these snagged tectonic plates and all these massive pressures are hidden underground, it completely breaks the way we consume information.
It really does.
Because if I turn on the television or open a news app, all I see is the quiet surface. How are you or I supposed to build a radar for what's underground?
That is the crucial question.
How do we spot the heat if the system is actively designed to hide it?
Well, that brings us to the second major framework from our sources today. It's called LMOS version 1.1.
LMOS.
Yes. LMOS stands for a mental operational system. It's a practical analytical toolkit designed specifically to help you read the world differently during a silence phase.
So if the old way of reading the news is broken, this is like the upgrade patch for your brain.
Exactly. It is an upgrade patch.
I am definitely ready for the upgrade. How does it work?
The absolute foundational rule of this new mental OS is structure over impression.
Structure over impression.
Right. We have to stop reading the news to judge whether an event, a policy, or a statement is 100% right or wrong.
Well, that's hard to do.
It is, but that binary moralizing way of thinking is a trap. It keeps you stuck on the surface. Instead, we need to read for structure.
Meaning what?
Meaning we need to look for causality, what physical thing is actually changing another physical thing, and we need to look for objectives. What is the system actually trying to maximize, regardless of what it says it's doing?
So we have to move away from just fact-checking the press release and start looking at the gears turning underneath.
Yes. And crucially, look for gradients.
Gradients.
A gradient is a slope, a direction where pressure is pushing. You are looking for plausibility rather than absolute certainty. You want to see which way the structural wind is blowing, rather than obsessing over whether a specific news headline is perfectly factually accurate in its framing.
But how do we actually do that?
Yeah,
The LMOS framework gives us a specific tool for this, right?
it does.
It asks us to take the information we consume and mentally split it into three distinct layers. They call it the N, I, and OS layers.
This is an incredibly powerful way to process any piece of information. Let's break those down and apply them.
Okay.
The first is the N layer, which stands for narrative. This is the official story. It's the media slogan, the public statement, the shiny surface of the news.
So if a major shipping conglomerate announces they are permanently rerouting their cargo vessels away from a major international canal, and they cite, strategic optimization and modernizing transit routes,
Yeah.
that statement is the N layer.
Exactly. It's sterile, it's corporate, and it projects total control.
Yeah.
But underneath that is the I layer, the internal layer. This is the realm of underlying values, intentions, and crucial fears.
Fears, okay.
It's the hidden drive of the person or institution speaking. It is why they are pushing that specific narrative.
So in our shipping example, the I layer isn't about optimization.
Yeah.
The I layer is the board of directors panicking because maritime insurance premiums for that canal have skyrocketed to the point of bankrupting them. The I layer is fear.
Spot on. The I layer is fear, and then you go one level deeper to the OS layer, the operational system.
Okay, the OS layer.
These are the actual physical mechanisms driving reality. We're talking about the military logistics, the physical commodities, the actual institutional levers being pulled.
So the OS layer in this scenario is that the geopolitical security apparatus guarding that canal has structurally failed. The physical water is literally no longer safe to traverse.
Right. So the news reported strategic optimization. But by breaking it down, you found the structural truth.
The military security umbrella has failed. That's the OS layer.
Right.
Which caused insurance to become unpayable out of fear, the I layer.
Yep.
Forcing the company to try and save face with a corporate buzzword, the N layer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You just saw the heat accumulation beneath the silence.
Wow. Okay, let me push back on this a bit, though.
Sure.
When we talk about looking past the narrative and trying to find the real pressure, what about all the highly emotional, incredibly biased commentators yelling on the news or on social media?
Oh, that's a great question.
Right. If we want to see the underlying objective structure, shouldn't we just ignore all that emotional yelling? Isn't that just useless noise and clickbait that obscures the truth?
It is a very natural instinct to want to tune that out, but
Yeah.
the LMOS framework flips that assumption entirely. Yeah, there is a rule in the text called emotion as gradient. The framework explicitly instructs us never to dismiss bias or high emotion as just an error or as useless noise.
Wait, really? Even the totally panicked or angry talking heads who are clearly just trying to get engagement online.
Especially them. The framework tells us to treat a panicked, angry, or overly emotional commentator as a highly sensitive thermometer.
A thermometer.
Think of them as a sensor. Their emotional intensity isn't a mistake we should ignore. It shows us exactly where a membrane is under the most tension. High emotion equals high structural pressure.
But surely some of it is just grifting for clicks, right? How do we
Right.
differentiate between structural heat and someone just putting on an act to build an audience?
Well, that's the beauty of the gradient rule. Even the grifter is following a gradient.
Oh, I see.
Performative outrage only works if it taps into a genuine underlying structural tension in the audience. If an online personality starts grifting about energy policies and it gets millions of views, the specific things they're saying might be completely wrong.
But the fact that it resonates so violently tells you where the societal tension actually is.
Exactly. They are a windsock. They show you which way the structural wind is blowing.
That is a phenomenal way to look at it. You're saying we shouldn't get caught up in whether their specific argument is right or wrong.
No, we shouldn't.
We should look at the anger itself as data and say, the fact that this specific topic is generating so much heat means the tectonic plate underneath it is currently grinding.
Exactly. Their bias is mapping the heat for you. Let's say a financial analyst has an absolute meltdown on television over a minor shift in a tech regulation.
Okay.
The N layer is their specific technical argument, but the I layer reveals a massive underlying fear about their portfolio.
And the OS layer tells us that the financial mechanisms they rely on are stretched to the absolute breaking point.
Yes. The emotion points you directly to the shear and the calcification.
You stop being manipulated by the emotion,
Yeah.
and you start utilizing it as raw telemetry data.
That's exactly it.
So we have these tools now. We understand how to separate the narrative from the internal fears and the operational realities, and we know to use emotion as a gradient to map the hidden heat.
Right.
But let's connect this back to the ticking clock of the silence phase itself. Why is it so crucial that you, listening to this, start using these tools right now? What is the actual end game of this eerie quiet?
The end game is what the text calls the nonlinear jump.
The nonlinear jump.
And this is why understanding the silence phase is so critical. The very lack of visible change that we are experiencing right now lulls people into a profound false sense of security.
Because it's quiet.
Because it is quiet on the surface, three very dangerous things happen in sequence.
Okay, walk us through that sequence. What happens first?
First, because nothing seems to be breaking visibly, the actual risks are vastly underestimated by both the public and the policymakers.
Right. The heat is accumulating,
Yeah.
but everyone looks at the lack of fire and assumes the system is fine.
Exactly. Second, because the risks are underestimated, crucial responses are delayed. People think we have time to fix the supply chain, or we have time to figure out the grid.
And the third consequence?
Because of that ongoing delay, the eventual cost of adjusting to reality skyrockets exponentially.
Wow.
The pressure keeps building, the speed differences keep pulling, the tectonic plates keep snagging harder and harder.
And then the earthquake finally hits.
Exactly. Major global shocks, whether it's a sudden 300% explosion in energy prices, a total overnight supply cutoff of a critical mineral, or widespread social unrest.
Yeah.
They always look steady to the public. They look nonlinear. One day the world seems fine, and the next day it is completely upside down.
But the STA 9.3 thesis says they aren't sudden at all.
Not at all. They are entirely prepared in the dark.
Wow.
They are built day by day during the silence phase, in those quiet, ignored spaces where the speed shear and the membrane calcification were just allowed to fester.
Because nobody wanted to look at the underlying structure.
Exactly.
So the pressure finally overwhelms the calcified membrane.
Yeah.
And it just shatters.
Yes. Once that specific physical or economic threshold is crossed, the trapped heat is no longer trapped. It becomes visible all at once.
The earthquake.
The system aggressively, violently realigns itself to reality in a matter of days or weeks. That is the nonlinear jump. And if you aren't reading the structural gradients, if you are only reading the end-layer press releases,
It will look like it came out of nowhere.
it will.
It's like the old Hemingway quote about how a person goes bankrupt. Gradually, then suddenly.
Oh, that's perfect.
Right. The silence phase is the gradually. The nonlinear jump is the suddenly.
That captures it perfectly. The gradually is the structural invisible heat accumulation. That suddenly is just the final unavoidable release of that heat.
Let's bring this home and summarize the journey we've just taken.
Let's do it.
We started by looking at a world that feels incredibly tense, yet surprisingly stable on the surface. But we've learned that the quiet we see right now, whether it's in energy markets, global logistics, or the rapid expansion of finance and AI, is not peace.
No, it's not.
It's not resilience, it is trapped friction. It's the heat of clashing speeds and hardened, calcified systems that are actively refusing to vent their pressure.
And importantly, we've outlined how to adapt to that reality.
Yeah.
By upgrading our mental OS to LMOS 1.1, we can stop getting distracted by the surface narrative. We can start reading the news for those hidden layers.
The internal fears driving the actions, and the physical operational mechanisms constraining reality.
Right. We can use the emotional outbursts we see in the media not as noise, but as vital gradients that point directly to where the system is under the most profound stress.
You can actually spot the heat before it erupts. You can see the earthquake while it's still miles underground.
Exactly.
Which gives you the most valuable resource of all, time to prepare.
Which is the ultimate goal of understanding the silence phase. It shifts your posture from reaction to anticipation.
We want to leave you with a final provocative thought today. Something to chew on long after this deep dive ends.
Yeah.
We spent this entire time talking about the global scale, geopolitics, macroeconomics, supply chains, but the rules of the silence phase, the shear and the calcification of membranes apply to human systems of any size.
They absolutely do.
So look at your own life. Look at your career trajectory, your organization, or your interpersonal relationships.
Where is the shear in your own life?
Exactly. Where are you relying on a calcified membrane? Where are you suppressing a natural reaction or ignoring a fundamental incompatibility just to keep the peace and maintain the quiet?
Right.
Are you trapping heat in your own lives? Because remember, just because the tectonic plates are quiet on the surface doesn't mean they aren't about to snap. Keep your eyes on the structure. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.